Hello, I'm John Bindernagel, a wildlife biologist who's been studying the Sasquatch for many years. And what I'd like to do in this research video, this very important research video, is address the absence of the Sasquatch from our North American mammal field guides. So let's start with and it's not an entirely hypothetical situation. It's a situation where a person observes a Sasquatch, and he or she observes it well enough to describe it in detail, the thickness of the neck, the deep-set eyes, the outward-facing nostrils. He has seen it well enough to make a pretty decent drawing, even to the point of adding scale. Okay, so now in the old days, for me not so long ago, we would go home and we would try to look up that mammal in a field guide. It would be mammals of British Columbia here. That particular person was in Ontario, mammals of Ontario, mammals of North America, and perhaps the very authoritative Peterson Field Guide series by mammals by Burton Grossenheider that I use and most biologists use in the field. He would not find a mammal corresponding to what he observed. The closest he would find would be an upright bear. And I've been addressing this for some years because I sensed this as a problem. Here's my cover of my first book, 1998, North America's Great Ape, the Sasquatch. And on the cover, I used this, and I suppose this is hypothetical, someone observing a Sasquatch in the field, writing down in his field notebook the difference between maybe a black bear that he had seen on this or a previous trip and what he had seen on this trip, and the whole dilemma of seeing something that shouldn't be there. So I included in both my books, for the first book, as an alternative to the upright bear, kind of a generic field guide drawing of a Sasquatch. In the second book, I repeated that, well, very slightly modified. But of course, the problem is, I've been doing this, not in Field Guide to the Mammals, but in Sasquatch books, which are not widely available or widely accepted as authoritative, whereas this is very authoritative. So finally, in the preparation actually of my second book, my colleague Leela Cheek, who's a Princeton PhD and who did some great editing with this book, and who also directed me to a number of authors. And she kept saying, John, you should read Thomas Gilovich. And why would I read Thomas Gilovich? Thomas Gilovich is a sociologist at Cornell. He has written some interesting books. This one actually addresses what he calls the fallibility of human reason in everyday life. And it turns out that Gilovich made some really good points. And the one that really applies to us here, okay, let me just back up a minute here. The absence of the Sasquatch from books such as this, mammal field guides such as this, seems to fulfill the prophecy or the expectation that the Sasquatch does not exist. If it exists, it surely should be here by now. What Gilovich calls this is a seemingly fulfilled prophecy. And here we are. And seemingly fulfilled prophecies, as he describes them, refer to expectations, first, that they alter a person's world or limit another's responses. Okay, so having seen a Sasquatch and not finding it in mammal field guides or on mammal list, for some people does alter their world. It makes them question, in some cases, their sanity. Okay, it certainly limits their responses. Now, let me continue with that very statement. Limits their responses in such a way that it is difficult or impossible for the expectations to be disconfirmed. So, the expectation, based on such books, is that the Sasquatch does not exist, or it would be included. How can we disconfirm that? Not by actively conforming to some expectancy, but by having little opportunity to disconfirm it. Now, this sounds a little complicated, but the expectancy is that the Sasquatch does not exist, because it's not here. Okay, and I'll jump to the last part. There's little, in fact, there's no opportunity to disconfirm it. Now, that is something, well, as I mentioned, I addressed it in some Sasquatch books, but it needs to be addressed in a book such as this. So let me just suggest what could happen, and I'm suggesting it should happen and must happen, is that we have this very nice bear page. Okay, what we need pretty much next to it is this proposed Sasquatch entry, not in a Sasquatch book, but in a North American mammal book, saying yes. And if we use this beautiful, beautifully illustrated bear page as a template, we can do the same thing with the Sasquatch. You know, show the Sasquatch pointing out anatomical features, maybe show an upright bear for comparison, show the color phases of the Sasquatch, show some of the general, most common track shapes, show the range of track sizes, show the trackway. Do that, and then, you know, move on to other mammals. So it's a matter of context. And I'm sorry if I sound a little impatient, because there are, I'm sure, well, there are scientific colleagues, and many people say, you know, John, you can't do this. Well, you can't include that entry at this point in time. And my point is, yes, we can. Yes, we could have, probably 20 years ago. We can just do it a little more completely now. And yes, we must. If we are going to fulfill our sort of professional responsibility, we need to provide that alternative in an appropriate context. So I think, looking at the time, I think that's as far as I'm going to go in this particular presentation. What I am going to do in a series of subsequent presentations is work through this entry. Work through the anatomical features, work through the color phases, work through the tracks. I've actually addressed the trackway in another video about tracks in snow, because that's when we get to see the trackway, as when we have snow as a substrate. But we can support this very confidently. Thank you very much.